So, with your first season as the head coach almost in the books, what have you learned from a coaching perspective about your players, and how will you take what you've learned to ensure a competitive football team in the upcoming years?
Uh, it's, it's been a long season of learning, I think, for all of us. Obviously, this is my first year, as you said, it's my first year as a head coach, and my old boss and my mentor in Bob Almeida over at Stoneham always said, you don't know what you don't know, kid. And he was right. The learning curve for me was very, very steep. About my players, I mean, I think I've learned that I've got guys who are bought in. I've got guys who care about what they're doing. I've got guys who care about one another. I've got guys who care about the tradition and the legacy that we're trying to instill here, about the philosophy that we're trying to instill. And above all, I've got guys who are willing to work. And that, I think, is what every coach is really looking for in their players, is a willingness to do work, and a willingness to embrace the grind, and a willingness to learn, and to embrace failure as a means of future success. And I've got a bunch of guys in this room who are really into that, and I'm lucky. I'm definitely lucky.
What key differences did you notice from week 1 to week 10 in your games, your players, your coaches, and yourself?
I mean, from my players, I think the biggest difference for us was really twofold. One was just a knowledge of the game, and what we call football IQ. You know, we say as coaches, our job is to teach football IQ and raise football IQ. And so our abilities now to recognize offensive sets, to communicate adjustments, to have check systems in place, to understand where we want to attack offensively. Our players just have a tremendously much more diverse and effective knowledge of how the game works. There's no moment in a football game that's a small moment. And so if you look at us in, you know, our scrimmage weeks, very early in the season, you see a lot of guys on the backside of the play kind of saying, oh, that's not my play, it's going the other way. You know, you see a lot of guys kind of expect, even in rallying to the ball, expecting somebody else to make the tackle and saying, oh, he's got him locked up, I'll lay off. You don't see that on our defense, on our offense anymore. 11 guys on the field are consistently working all the time, you know, and that's probably the two biggest things for our players. For our coaches, I mean, I've got a young staff. We're one of the youngest staffs in the Middlesex League, without a doubt. And there was a steep learning curve for those guys too. Coaching is communicating knowledge to players. It's giving them the skills that they need in order to be successful. My guys have really learned over, I think, this season how to be effective and how to be efficient and how to communicate directly, also in a manner that conveys their faith in the ability of that player to do the job that he's being asked to do, and also to do so efficiently. I've got a great staff. I love those guys. For me, man, the learning curve has been just exponential. It's been a really humbling process, you know, because I think that as coaches we have this grand sense of ourselves. There has to be kind of that, you know, confidence in self in order to be a good coach. A big piece for me is trying to find that balance now as the boss between being energetic and emotional and getting that out of my players, and yet being even-keeled enough to manage my program. I've gotten better at managing my staff. I've gotten better at managing my players. I've gotten better at managing my program. I'm excited to break down what needs to get done going into next year and move forward.
How much of a factor did snapping the 23-game skid in Medford play in beating Salem and Boston Line here at Harris?
I would be lying if I said it didn't play any factor. I say to guys a lot, to my guys and to people who ask that question, that, you know, we talked about it at the beginning of the season, our blinders are really effective. Our blinders are on all the time. And when I say that, what I mean is we're looking at one game. You know, we're looking at one game. And in all honesty, our blinders are, we're looking at one practice, and then we're looking at the next practice, and then we're looking at the next practice, and then we're looking at pregame practice, and then we're looking at the game. So the coach in me wants to say it didn't have any effect, because we're just going to go about doing our job and working to get better every day. But we're human beings, man. We're emotional creatures. That definitely gave us a boost. You know, we've been telling the kids, guys, you just got to keep coming in and working at your best and playing at your best. And one day your best is going to be good enough to win. And that day came against Medford. So it definitely was really, really gratifying for our guys to experience that, and it definitely brought a little bit of energy into the subsequent weeks, and I think faith in our offensive and defensive system's ability to be successful.
How impressed have you been with Max Jones's performance running the ball towards the end of the season, and who else has stood out as a playmaker this season that has come up big when needed?
Well, with Max, I mean, Max is a special athlete. You know, he's a guy that doesn't come around every year. You know, you could maybe even go your whole life without getting a guy who has that kind of explosive ability. Max is just a tremendously explosive back. His ability to go from 0 to top speed is unparalleled, I think, definitely on our team. And quite possibly in the Middlesex. And there are a lot of great running backs in the Middlesex. People discount him as a small guy. He's a really tough runner too. And you know, there's a great play I think Lucas caught against Salem, man, where he you know, went into a pile, rolled out of the pile, broke another tackle, and turned a 3-yard gain into a 10-yard gain. Max does that on a pretty regular basis. He's a load, you know, to get in front of that kid and tackle him. You know, he's obviously, his success has allowed us to change our offensive approach a little bit and say, hey, we've got this kid and he's running well, let's give him the ball and find different ways to try and get the football in his hands. And on top of all of that, he's just a great human being and he's a great leader. We're really lucky that he was a member of our captain corps this year and that he was carrying the rock for us as much as he was. Other guys who have stepped up, Cal Cristofori hasn't, I think, thrown the ball for as many yards or touchdowns or all that stuff as he did last year, but his progression as a quarterback is tremendous in terms of understanding his footwork and his hand action and his reads. He makes big throws for us on 3rd down. He's a really calm and even kid, man. He doesn't rattle very easily, and you want that in a quarterback. You know, you want somebody who, it's 3rd and 17, crowd's roaring, he doesn't care. He's just going to go out there and throw the ball. Jamar Paul has done some great things for us at wide receiver. Justin Wagner at defensive end and tight end. Makai Johnson as our spell back, trading some carries here and there with Max, has been a really pleasant surprise. And every single offensive lineman who gets really not a ton of credit. But, you know, we've shuffled. And for those guys to continue to do their jobs and move positions and continue to learn and get better, you know, we're not seeing the success that we have without those 5 guys.
So Watertown entering today's game at 8-2. What have you guys done with the players to combat effectively on offense and defense? What have you been focusing on?
I think our focus has just been on doing our job. You know, we really don't care who we're playing, and we really don't care what their record is. This is high school football. You know, any team can come in on any day and beat any other team, and that's a really big part of our philosophy. Watertown's a great football team. Coach Kakachi's a great head coach. They got some athletes. They were, you know, 7-0 going into the playoffs until they got upset by Swampscott, and that was an upset. I thought they were going to win that game. So obviously, you know, there's some athletes on that football team, and there's a great system in place, and they've had some success over the last couple of years. So their philosophy is kind of cooking along, and that's what we're trying to implant and build in here. You know, in terms of anything special that we're doing offensively and defensively, you know, probably not going to talk too much about that. I mean, we've got a couple of wrinkles here and there that we're putting in to try and accomplish some things. But really our focus has been on, you know, stuff that we talked about all the way back in August. Living in the rep, you know, staying within ourselves, doing our job to the best of our abilities, playing with passion, playing with controlled emotion, and focusing on the moment, focusing on the rep, focusing on the deed, as is right up above our door there, and keeping our focus there. And that's going to be a big component of whether or not we're successful tomorrow morning.
What adjustments have you made regarding injuries and other inactiveness on the front 7 through the season and specifically this game?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of shuffle on the offensive line. You know, we obviously, you know, lost big Chris Piccioni and Lowell Haska early in the season. Nara Gostayan. I mean, those are 3 varsity starters who were out early in the season. So, you know, coming into this week where we had some shuffling to do as well, we're kind of accustomed to it. You know, it's not a great thing to be accustomed to, but I think, you know, a lot of other teams kind of would have stopped and freaked out, and you know, that's just not really our style. You know, one of our big mantras that we haven't really talked a lot about is big play, next play. You know, and so yeah, it's a big moment to lose a guy like Chris or to lose a guy like Haska, but who's next? You know, who's next on the depth chart? Who's gonna rotate positions? You know, who's gonna go from tackle to guard and be successful? Who's gonna fill in at that tackle spot? So really, I think it's a testament to our philosophy that we just kind of keep plugging and we just kind of keep going, and you know, we'll put the next guy in there, and we do a lot of work to make sure that those guys are prepared and ready to play the game, and you know, so hopefully we experience the same level of success that we have shuffling around all season.
Lastly, what do you think has been the most memorable moment of the season for you thus far?
There have been a ton of memorable moments for us. I kind of got to go with the classic for me, and that's beating Medford in week 8. You know, that was obviously my first career win as a head coach, so it bore personal significance to me. You know, to get to see my guys, to get to do it with these guys who had just shown up every day and worked and believed in what we were teaching them, to see the looks of pride and joy and even relief on their faces after we won that game was really, really special. For my number one, and Coach Pereira presented me with the game ball in that huddle. I'm a man who talks a lot, and I didn't have a ton of words after that game. You know, I had tears in my eyes, and I was kind of choked up, and I remember getting in there and saying, we'll talk when we get home. And Dave came in over the top and said, you know, I want to do this right here for his first career win. Here's the game ball. And Dave's been with me at Stoneham, and he played for me when I was an assistant coach at Mackinac. I've known him since he was 16 years old and 17 years old, you know. And that was just a really, really, really special moment for me. I get kind of emotional just thinking about it, you know, because it's an example of football coming full circle. To have, you know, a kid that played for me and now who coaches with me, who I'm proud to call my brother, and then to see these kids kind of gratify what it is that they've been doing, like, to see them get what they deserve, you know, to see them get what they deserve, man, was a really, really special moment. Because I said it to them, I said, you know, I don't know that I would have had the wherewithal as a high school student to keep showing up every day in this program when people in the school are asking you why you're still playing football, or people in the community are asking you why you're still playing football, or maybe even people in your own family are asking you why you're still playing football. The program's 0-23, what are you doing? You know, to keep coming to practice every day, rain, snow, shine, hot, cold, to keep working, to keep learning, to keep trying to get better at your craft, for them to finally see that does pay off. You know, that belief and hard work and ethic and effort and family and caring for your brothers, that gets you somewhere, was the greatest moment of my professional career to date as a coach, without a doubt. It was a really, really special day, special night. I'll remember it for the rest of my life.